The DC universe been reclaimed whatever fall off that y'all think they had. I'm on y'all heads today because I woke up and I said, enough. That Superman trailer really had some of y'all bugged the fuck out, and it's a good thing that I know how to use Raid. Because contrary to popular belief, that's not the movie that's gonna save the DC universe. When I say shit like that, it's usually as a joke. Because the movie that saved the DC universe, specifically the stigma of DC's bad project, is the second Suicide Squad. Everything about this movie is a masterpiece. And coincidentally enough, it happened to have been James Gunn's first DC film. And I've been saying this for years, my digital footprint is here. When this movie came out, it woke my eyes to everything that was missing in comic film. We don't have enough exaggerated fun with blood. It's always on the scale of one or the other. Let's take another one of his projects, for example, Guardians of the Galaxy. In the general aspect of it, people know Guardians of the Galaxy as that funny, slap-lucky team. But it holds back on this comic aspect. This perception is going to be really hard for me to explain, so you have to just walk with me. It's a great fantasy film inspired by a comic. And it's a lot of what the MCU excelled at, making the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But in order to create that, they subbed out so much comic appeal. You understand what I'm saying? So when the Suicide Squad 2 is announced and we find out it's the same hand of James Gunn, we're expecting the cinematic appeal. But what makes this movie so perfect is it feels like I'm reading a comic book, especially with how this film jumps so quickly to the chaos, and we're just thrown into this chaotic Suicide Squad mission. From the character introduction to the subtitle card slides, he even did this thing when we are focused on each individual character, how we're in their own world. It's an aspect that's more noticeable when you look at Harley Quinn because of how chaotic her mind is, and you notice it in the more humorous aspect like Polka Dot Man and his mother, but it exists individually with all of them, and it's so perfect. This was a film that felt like it was ripped out of a graphic novel, and that's an aspect that has been missing for so long. Movies are able to do this. The Amazing Spider-Man franchise visually is such a Spider-Man movie. Raimi Spider-Mans are the definition of, and no diss to the MCU, but once we get into the MCU era of comic film, it inspires this nasty trend of just making superhero movies. And it makes sense because they're all connected, but it began to water down the individuality. But it began to water down what made comic media so appealing, which is the individuality of the creator. Are you following along? Trying to make superhero movies is a large reason as to why DC fell. It's why this movie feels so lackluster. We run into the same movie 3-act construct structure. The incident, the midpoint, the climax, and that does not work when we're talking about comic book media. Because there are so many pages of which things go up and down and back and forth and climax and oh my god and no wait, plot twist. The superhero movies become predictable unless they do something completely dramatic like in the end, kill everybody. But that's something that can only work so many times. But that is the specialty of the Suicide Squad. We know that a large portion of these people are gonna die, but how are you gonna make me care? That's what Suicide Squad stories are best at. So when people are still sitting here saying DC fell off, especially as comic book fans, you're just telling me that you don't care about comic media. You don't care about comic media, you're just bandwagoning on fandom wars. Talk about it's another movie that feels like you're reading a Batman story while also being completely unassociated to the superhero genre. This is a crime thriller, and those are supposed to be the appeals when you're watching these movies. That's a consistent time. But that's not something that DC, Warner Brothers, or even James Gunn should be striving for, because the individuality of telling these character stories is what's supposed to shine. They tried to minimize